to produce that higher standard for kids, attainment, and all the rest. At the same time, Newton has the second highest number of millionaires in the state of Massachusetts, but yet 1 in 7 of the residents of the city of Newton live at or below the poverty level. So I see this in my own school system. You have, and this is economic inequality, that I've tried to address in my own city. We have residents, kids coming from households of lower income, going to a school system, same school system of kids of higher income. The higher income families are able to provide the resources, interventions for children early on before they enter kindergarten and then beyond. And the low income folks are not. And so you see this achievement gap. It doesn't mean that the kids are any less smarter. It's just that the kids from wealthier families are getting those supports and interventions before kindergarten and then beyond. So even in my own city, I see this in a lot of different ways. The city of Newton is a microcosm of the state of Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. We have concentrated wealth in certain areas of our state, particularly in and around the greater Boston area, and then you have communities and people within those and outside of those that are falling behind continually. So how I look at it is, what we've done in Newton is a few things. I inherited a financial crisis in my city, $40 million deficit, no rainy day fund, 2 of the worst conditioned school buildings, and didn't have the kind of architecture supports to support lower income families in my city. In 8 years, I've eliminated the $40 million structural deficit. I've grown a rainy day fund to $20 million. I have 2 AAA bond ratings. One of my AAA bond ratings was in danger of being downgraded. We are building 5 new schools in the next 6 years, 3 of which are done. The next is being constructed right now. We have added teachers to the classroom. We have added a high school internship program in my city. Started with 6, we're now at 95 for kids that wouldn't have had a shot in the summer. Curriculum, paid internship, exposure to higher paying jobs, world of work. So we have a housing strategy to address housing. We have a transportation strategy that's moving ahead. We permitted new housing projects in the 8 years I've been there that's going to produce affordable housing. So we're attacking it. We did it. And you say, how do I take this to Beacon Hill? By first, every single one of my budgets were based on outcomes for people, outcome driven for the people in my city. They weren't
not corporations,
not corporations, and not moving money around just to keep the budget afloat, like Charlie Baker's doing on Beacon Hill. The second is I wasn't afraid to raise revenue at the city level. Newton could afford to do that because we had a strong tax base. It was tough to do in my re-election year, but I did that. I put a tax override package. Not all communities can do that. We can't be afraid to raise revenue at the state level. This is why I support the Fair Share Tax Amendment. Governor Baker's against the Fair Share Tax Amendment, millionaire's tax, by the way.
He's a millionaire, right?
I don't know that. We could probably check into it. I don't know. But, going back to, what I was saying about outcomes for people, one of the other things we did to address economic inequality and save money was really go big on what Deval Patrick started on environmental sustainability and solar. So we've cut our carbon footprint in half in the city of Newton because of the solar work we've done and the reduction of energy consumption. Our municipality has cut our footprint in half. We're going to save $20 million over 20 years because of that work, which helped our budget. We found savings not to hurt the residents, enhance the city. But in addition to that, we shared off of municipal property solar credits to 900 of our lowest income residents in the city so that they would get a credit off their energy bill. Very modest credit, which is a big deal. So we put that in place. It's been in place for a year, very successful. So how would I think about governing in this regard in Massachusetts in addition to the policy ideas? What would I take from Newton? I learned in Newton and that we were able to get things done by outcome-based budgeting, representing the people, not being afraid to make tough decisions, and asking people who are doing really well to contribute a little bit more so we can reinvest that. And that has to happen on Beacon Hill.
Okay. As far as $15 an hour, raising minimum wage. Everybody makes $15 an hour. How would this work for small businesses? How would this work for businesses that don't create that much revenue but do have 2 or 3 employees and are looking at insurance, and it's overwhelming. I can't pay them $15 an hour, but you want to raise the minimum wage for everyone, which hurts me as a small business owner. How dare you?
So I love that question, and this brings about another interesting intersection that I wanted to bring up in this discussion. I was up in a town called Winchendon, Massachusetts. Do you know where that is?
I do not.
It's up north. It's almost on the border, north of Boston. Winchendon is a small town. I read it. I found out about it because it was featured in a Boston Globe story. This town went for Donald Trump, completely for Donald Trump. And I read about this person, Jesse, and his girlfriend, Rebecca and Jesse, who owned the hometown diner there. They supported Trump. I decided I wanted to visit them. I am a strong believer that we have to push back against any policy that comes out of the White House that's sexist, bigoted, xenophobic, that makes us less safe. You know, the federalization of police officers, some of the other Muslim ban, but at the same time, there are people that voted for Donald Trump that didn't vote for him for those reasons. And I've been having these conversations. So I had to sit down with Jesse, and twice already. We had great conversations, and he is in agreement with a lot of the things we talked about today. Incidentally, I was in Dudley Square at Dudley Doe just a little while ago. I know that it sounds like they're closing soon.
Unfortunately,
yeah. But one of the things I said at Dudley Square, and then I'll talk about $15 minimum wage, when I heard from Jesse in Winchendon and when I heard from the people at Dudley, were the same. Mm-hmm. Same issues that he's facing. He's a business owner. The same issue of education, housing, transportation, the opioid crisis, all these things, criminal justice, all these things mirror the discussion we had at Dudley. So we've got to find a way to work together. I want folks to understand that we have more in common, believe it or not, than we don't. But Jesse brought up this question of the $15 minimum wage, he and his girlfriend, and he said, look, you know, I want to pay my people $15, but we're a family-owned business. This could really, he told me we were on the edge a few times this summer. So he said, I believe in it. Perhaps we can figure out how to do some offsets for certain types of small businesses, so and phase this in, so you don't put us out of business. And we had a great conversation about it. I'm willing to look at those options for really small businesses, and ideas, so that we can ensure that those businesses are able to grow, and we're investing in them, as well as making sure people are making a living wage. So I'm open to that thinking. So that we can protect our small and family-owned businesses.
Mm. As far as housing is concerned, you've mentioned housing multiple times,
yep.
But when we look at AMI, which is governed by HUD, AMI says the area median income, for those who don't know. And in Boston, our AMI also includes Newton, which has, like you mentioned, a bunch of millionaires. So instead of Boston's AMI being maybe 65, 75,000, because we know 50% of Bostonians make under $35,000 a year. Our AMI is 91,000.
Right,
so according to the guidelines of HUD, the 80% AMI of 91,000, you know, a lot of Bostonians can't afford to live in the city that they grew up in. Yeah. So when you say affordable housing as governor, what does that mean?
Yeah. No, I think the AMI, and it's in Newton as well. You can subsidize the units to make it more affordable. That's an option, and we certainly have done that in Newton. But we've got to look at this AMI issue with HUD, because it's a lot of around the greater Boston area, it's the same question, and I'm willing to do that, as well as making sure we are providing the right kind of subsidies, the amount, which has been cut at the federal level. CDBG funds, for example, have been gutted at the federal level over 15 years. That's home funds. These are funds that are so important that come out of HUD that are able to subsidize units for people. And we also have to subsidize at the state level. we have to do that. We've got to put those resources in play so that when we talk about affordability, it's real. It's not using just that AMI number, which is not accurate. It does not really reflect if someone can afford to live in Newton or Boston or other places.
We started with veterans. I'd like to end with veterans. As far as services that are not, that once were put in place for veterans that now have kind of dwindled off, and we see more veterans than ever suffering as far as not being able to apply for different programs, or just, health care being denied for certain claims. And, personally through my family, I've seen so many of the veterans just, I fought for this country and now I'm out of luck.
Right. So this is personal to me, as you know, as being a veteran, third generation combat vet. My dad was a Korean War vet. My grandfather was a World War II vet, Battle of the Bulge. Here's how I see it. Just a few weeks ago, I proposed that we move and create a secretariat that would report directly to the governor, a secretariat of veterans and military families in the state of Massachusetts. While Massachusetts, in many ways, leads the nation in veterans affairs, and it does. We have VSOs in every city. We have certain types of resources that are provided to veterans coming home that other states don't go. We need to build on our success. We cannot sit and say, we can do better. So moving and creating this cabinet agency would do two things. One, it would include military families in Veterans Affairs. We would be the first state to include military families in Veterans Affairs. Second, it would have a direct accountability to the governor. It's really important. And third, this cabinet secretariat would be right at the table, along with the other cabinet secretariats. Currently, it's under HHS, Health and Human Services, along with Elderly Affairs, which I'd also like to move to a direct report, full cabinet agency, full cabinet secretariat. But this would allow for us, I believe, as a state, to build on our successes, review where there are gaps, make sure they're addressed at the gubernatorial level, and integrate veterans into every aspect of decision-making in government. Housing, transportation, military families and veterans should have a voice and be integrated in that discussion at the gubernatorial level. I know this works because every month I bring my department heads, all my senior department heads together. We have a meeting, data stat meeting, to evaluate where we are. They're all equals at the table. They can chime in and add, make sure they're included. My veterans service officer is right at that table. So is my senior service officer. They have a voice there, and it's strengthened our ability to deliver services for veterans and seniors in the state.
I would like to close out Setti Warren, current mayor of Newton, running for governor. You have my vote. I might have to edit that out, but I definitely do support you.
Thank you.
I would like to leave you with some of my ideas personally.
Sure. Yes.
I would love to see, as far as childcare is concerned, childcare is through the roof. I am blessed that I have a 14 and a 12-year-old that can be at home by themselves. But when it comes to childcare, there are people that are paying rent in childcare.
Yes.
Every week.
Yep.
$500 a week
Yep.
for a baby. Like, that's absolutely, it blows my mind. What I would like to see is an integration between our elders and our youth. If we're able to, my grandmother raised me. I would love to see the elders that are currently, maybe they're not working, maybe they don't have, they have plenty of time on their hands. What if they're able to, transport the children to school, just integrate our village once again, because we're so disconnected. I would love to see an integration of our youth and our elders, and bring in the wisdom, bring in that knowledge, and then maybe some of these young kids can have manners and respect just a little bit. Aside from that, we have universities, we have hospitals that pay nothing in tax, but yet they take up so much of our land mass. I would love to see these hospitals and these universities and these schools maybe adopt schools, as far as elementary schools are concerned, middle schools, high schools. So if you have MIT, for example, why doesn't MIT have like a junior MIT, like, or some type of dual enrollment where a youth in the 9th grade or 10th grade, just like you in Newton, have the internship? Why can't you intern at MIT and study under somebody's TA? Or I don't know, I think we have all of these resources, and everybody always, it's always money. How much money can you give us? But at the end of the day, we have resources that are invaluable, that you can't put a price tag on. So I would like to see in your cabinet just innovative ideas, like outside of the box, things that are not typical to our current cabinet or any other cabinet previously.
I think those ideas are fantastic. Tapping into the strengths of Massachusetts, our colleges and universities that could certainly, we could tap into their resource for our younger people. I think that's a great idea. One of the things, I think you were reading my mind about elder affairs and veterans, one of the other components that when I made these proposals was not just to think of making sure they have the services they need, but to use them as resources. These are great resources, veterans and seniors. Seniors are one of the fastest growing populations in the state of Massachusetts. There is so much ability, wisdom, ability for them to contribute to the needs that we have today. The same with veterans, and all the issues that we talked about, whether it's young people, as you mentioned, the opioid crisis that I talked about. There's so many ways that veterans, so I want to tap into veterans and seniors using the cabinet secretariats to contribute their abilities, their capabilities to address the most pressing needs of our time here in the Commonwealth. So you got ahead of me on that one. I have been talking about that.
Great minds think alike.
Yes.
Is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with?
Yes, I want to end on this. I always like to share this experience, with people as I move around the Commonwealth. I was in a classroom at UMass Lowell just a few weeks ago, and we had a similar discussion that you and I had today. And he said, "What is the biggest challenge for you out there? How do we do this young man?" And I said, it's not a policy issue. It's two things. First, the idea that the status quo is okay. It's okay that people are being crushed by healthcare. It's okay that we're not creating housing for people across the board. It's okay that we're not addressing the opioid crisis. It's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay that we have the worst commuter rail system in the country. All these things are not okay. So one is accepting the status quo as it's all right. The second is the idea that you can't do anything about it. You can't do anything about it. We learned a lesson, all of us, in the last couple of years about the fact that elections matter. You can change what's happening in the state of Massachusetts if you have the right leadership in place and the right leaders with the political will to tell the truth, to move us there. So I want to leave you with that, and your listeners and the folks out there. We can make a generational difference at this moment in our Commonwealth. We have the power to do that. It's up to all of us to get there. And I ask for people's support to get there.
Waking Up with Tayla Andre is not about the time of day that we link up, but about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. I hope you woke up with Tayla Andre today. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. And I hope you guys have an amazing day. Mwah. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. That was fantastic. How long was that?
That was about 50 minutes.
You were right on. It goes by.
Yes.
You do a great job.
Thank you.
You do a wonderful job. It feels like a conversation and not a. It's great. You really have a great way of, pulling out, and then you've got a great interactive with the people online, and you really respect their questions.
No, their questions come first.
Very complicated. The Native American one. We should get those information so I can follow up with those two people.
They were asking the questions on Facebook.
Yes, they
so
were.
we can look.
We can get that because I do want to follow up with you.
Yeah, we can look at.
Do you mind if we take a picture?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I can take it for you.
Thank you. Whatever questions you guys have, we'll have to reserve them for when he becomes governor. How about that?